In other words, you're asking what are some of the key issues that will determine the results that we'll get in this election. So let me bring in Felix. Felix, what are your thoughts? Asha is asking, so how do you think this is going to pan out? What are the key issues that you think Kenyans are looking at or they looked at as they went to vote?
Well, I think it's clear from the trend that we saw that there were only two strong horses in this race, the Honorable Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta. And the results that we are seeing so far actually reflect that. I think, you know, first of all, I want to concur with my colleagues that, I mean, Kenyans came out in large numbers to exercise their democratic right. And I was encouraged because to an extent I thought that because of the imperfections inherent in our democracy, people had lost hope. But there were people who slept in the polling stations and things like that.
As early as 3, guys were lining
up. Exactly. As early as 3, there was some people actually were there as early as at midnight. Yeah, there was somebody who was there at 12 noon. I think for President Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, is his record, as he delivered over the last 4.5 years, and that is what really people will be looking at. And I think it's a referendum on his presidency. For Prime Minister Raila Odinga, he's been hammering on the message of change. Whether that is going to sell in this election, I think, is something that we are going to see as the night progresses. Yeah, okay. But I think those are the two main issues that divide the two campaigns.
So with respect to today's election, if you were to give it your scorecard, what sort of scorecard would you give it?
Look, like Lorna said, if you look at the 3 last elections in this country, the problem really is not the voting process. The problem, Kenyans come out, they vote very peacefully, and for this particular elections, I think what has worked is that, one, I agree with Kamodo, the technology has worked. It failed massively. In 2013, by 8 a.m. in the morning, we knew for a fact that technology had massively failed, and the IEBC had advised Kenyans that they were reverting to the manual system. But the tricky part, despite the peaceful elections and despite the process that has generally worked, IEBC personnel, save for minor hitches here and there, demonstrated serious knowledge and training and awareness of the electoral process. I think this election was also very well covered in terms of observers. But if you look at 2007 and 2013, the real challenge is what happens when a voter casts his ballot and the results are declared. In other words, biometric technology worked, the electronic voter identification devices worked, but yet the third most important technology is now in progress, and that is the results transmission system. Yeah. Is it foolproof? Are we going to see evidence of functionality comparable to the way the EVIS and BVR work today?
Okay, so from where you sit, IEBC has done a good job.
I think they did, but I think the final test, of course, is the results transmission. That is really the final test. Because like Lorna pointed out, there's really nothing wrong with the voting process. That usually is very smooth. If you analyze the last 2 elections,
Lorna says Kenyans
2007, 2013. But the challenge is, how do we manage and handle the results? What happens when a voter casts his ballot and the results are declared and the winner known? That is really the challenge that we have as a country, that we really, and we will only be able to ascertain the level of IEBC preparedness and how they procured a credible process when we analyze how they've managed this last process that has been very elusive over the last 2 elections.
The one good thing about our elections is that every election cycle we improve. The reality is that in 2007, 2000 was a disaster. In fact, even though the election was peaceful, what we found out from the Kriegler report is that there was a lot of rigging. And most of that was by consensus, because the rigging was happening in people's strongholds. So nobody complained. But the reality is that the lessons we learned from 2013 informed some of the changes that we made, 2007, informed some of the changes we made in 2013. And you notice that the level of complaints, even if you look at the number or the issues raised in the various petitions, the number of complaints had reduced. And a lot of petitions were actually dismissed in 2013 because they were without foundation. So we had improved. But still, there are still some mistakes we made. And one of the fundamental mistakes we made is technology. Because for as long as technology doesn't work, it allows the opportunity for ballot stuffing and other problems with the process. So 2017, the technology has worked. Now, what one hopes is that the mistakes we had last time about the results tally process and the results transmission, we will have cured that, because it would be unfortunate if, having corrected in all the other aspects, we then have the same problem we had with the results transmission. So one waits. I think the other thing to say is what was interesting about today is that this IEBC has probably had the shortest time in terms of preparing for this election as an institution. Because remember that there's a fundamental change in the commissioners in the beginning of this year. And that has never happened in the years that we've had an election. But I think kudos must go to the Secretariat, because it appears like the Secretariat carried the burden, kept things moving. And so in a sense, you know, a lot of work has been done by Ezra Chiloba and his team. And I think they need to be affirmed. Now, what we must say, however, is that we're still at just before Kipindi Chalala Salama, which is the most difficult. They must ensure that we do not have a bad goal going in at this time. Because results transmission, what Kenyans actually wait for is the results. And so it's important that the results are right. And so, and if there are problems, because, and I have said this before, we all use technology every day. Technology can't go wrong. If technology goes wrong, let people know very early. Let it be open. Let everybody know, and let people have access to the information that will let them know that that information is credible.
Okay. Lona, hold on. I'll come to you in a bit. Let me bring in Zubeida Kome, who's also part of this great production for us. But then it will also be interesting to mention that we are waiting for a press briefing from NASA principals any moment from now. When that happens, of course, you're going to cross over and listen to what they have to say. Zubeida, una nini?